You're listening to a 58 Ember production.
Welcome to Sky Talkers. Here are your hosts, Charlotte and Caitlin.
Hello, and welcome to Sky Talkers. I'm your host, Charlotte.
And I'm your host, Caitlin. If you love Star Wars and you're looking for the best place to break down all the latest TV shows, movies, and themes from Star Wars, you're in the right place with Sky Talkers.
Welcome. Happy New Year. We're so happy that you're here, and we're so excited to talk about Skeleton Crew Episode 6. Caitlin is ill, if you can't tell. So she's been on vocal rest.
I've literally been, my niece gave me a cold over Christmas, and I was on the up and up, and then Charlotte and I went out for New Year's, and it was the most I had spoken in like a week. And I think I kind of went like one step forward, two steps back, which was worth it because we had such a good time on New Year's Eve. But
watching Skeleton Crew too. We'll tell you more about it.
Yeah, but anyway,
it was worth it.
Yeah, I literally haven't spoken because I was like, we got to record. I got to be able to speak. Anyway, so I apologize. How I sound. I hope it's not too bad.
It's not.
Okay.
It's not.
Okay, good.
But it might get worse throughout.
That's usually my MO. It's fine when we start, and then slowly but sure, it's like a downward trend. So I apologize, but literally the show must go on, and this was such a great episode. I'm so glad we got to watch it together.
Yeah, it was fun. Caitlin and I spent New Year's together, like she said, and we had the most random assortment of Star Wars that we watched. So Caitlin and I decided we mentioned this on the show, I think the first episode of Skeleton Crew, but inspired by Skeleton Crew, we bought these Fisher-Price walkie-talkies from 1983 called Sky Talkers, which I think is so funny that they're called that. And we had thought that maybe they had used the Fisher-Price Sky Talkers as on-screen props, but I don't think that's the case. But anyway, it doesn't matter. We Star Warsified them and spent the night crafting and drinking wine and talking and watching Star Wars. It was amazing. We watched the new episode of Skeleton Crew. Then it was like roulette basically on what we were going to watch. We watched Ahsoka episode 5, which was amazing. And we watched Solo, and we accidentally did a Howard off, really, honestly, because Ron Howard directed Solo, and then this episode of Skeleton Crew was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, his daughter. So really great, very fun. Happy New Year. And it was a great way to bring in the new year.
It was so much fun. It really was kind of like Russian roulette. We started with Solo, and then we had to stop halfway through to start Skeleton Crew, and then we decided to jump into Ahsoka. It was a little bit of everything. It was very fun. And you should see our walkie-talkies. They're on our Instagram and TikTok. They're so chaotic, but in the best way.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited about them. Yeah, so we posted a video on that if you want to go check those out. But anyway, okay. Episode 6 is called Zero Friends Again. When we saw this episode title, we were like, oh no. Oh no. And it was directed, like we said, by Bryce Dallas Howard and written again by Myung-Jo Wesner. Very excited about this. We loved her writing in the previous episode, so excited to have her back. And when her name flashed on the screen, I think you and I were like, makes sense because she killed it last time.
Yep.
And this aired New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2024. So first episode of 2025. Let's go. Okay. So really, really, really loved this episode. What did you think of it, Caitlin?
Oh, I thought it was great. I think last week was so good, but the emotions this week were just off the charts. KB and Wim in particular, I was thinking about it last night when I was doing the notes, and I was like, I just didn't know how much I needed KB and Wim to have time together. We've talked about mixing up the kids, right? Like from their usual friendships. But I think we've been talking about KB and Neel and like what they would talk about Fern and Wim, right? As like their respective best friends. But I don't think I really realized how great it would be to see Wim and KB together. And I just loved their dynamic. I'm excited once we kind of get further into the episode to talk about their interaction specifically. But I thought it was just such a lovely kind of episode about friendship and what it means to be a friend and communication and And then, you know, the other side of it is Ja jumping out of a hatch, just completely drenched in gold, laughing maniacally.
Treasure.
That was that was so great.
I
Kind of like
know.
two sides of the coin, I should say, the emotional coin. But I had such a good time with this episode. I can't decide if it's my favorite, but it might be.
I think it is for me.
Mhm.
No surprise, we are huge Bryce Dallas Howard stans on
Mhm.
this podcast. She really has got to come on Sky Talkers. She has to come on. If you're listening, Bryce, please, the door is open. We want you on the show. Because every time she does a great episode, usually the episode is focused on women's emotion, right? And I think that we got that with KB, and I love that character so much. I wasn't expecting her to be a favorite, but she really shines. And particularly, I know that we're going to talk about it, but particularly the part where Wim has to create the cylinder to put back into her head. I think the acting and the pacing of that scene was fantastic. And that really goes towards the child actors, of course, but also the pacing and the direction. I think that it was fantastic. And like you said, the themes of the episode with the friendship, communication, connection, and by the end of it, just togetherness and working together and that hug that they shared, it was just, I'm with you. I think this might be my favorite. It was so good. There were so many moments where you and I were watching it. We were like, oh my God. Oh my God. It was so good. Yeah. Okay. So let's get into it. We start the episode with the kids sliding down the longest slide known to man at the bottom of the mountain, and they all come out different tubes, which I thought was hilarious. A choice. And I thought the sound design here went crazy. It's like we immediately start and it is very loud.
Mhm, mhm.
And but great place to start. We just really hit us off from where we ended last episode. Um and I think one thing I really wanted to make sure that we talked about was I think we've been tracking whether or not KB's what do we call that? The
Her
headband
life
that she wears,
monitor.
her life monitor, was actually a life monitor or an accessory, or if it was some sort of disability or something medical. And I think we obviously got a confirmation here that it was something medical. She says that she was in an accident, like obviously, like I think a brain injury or something, right?
Mhm.
And that's what I thought at least. And I think we've had hints of that for a while. And I think the way that they played it actually works out well because when immediately when KB's kind of just ticked off in the beginning, you're a little confused as to why she's so mad. Like what happened? Is she okay? You know, when she gets up after Fern helps her out in the beginning. Were you a little confused here about what was going on? I think that the reason why I ask is I think this is purposeful. I think we were supposed to be like, how serious is this? What's going on? We were kind of put into the shoes of trying to figure out how serious her disability is, I think, and how serious the whole thing is, I guess.
I think what we see Fern do here in the beginning compared to what Wim does later on in the episode, like Fern is like, it's okay, we just have to reset her occipital link. I'm not sure if I wrote that down correctly, but you know, she's able to get her back up and moving pretty quickly. Whereas Wim, it becomes much more serious by the time it's just her and Wim. And I think I was kind of reading like what I wanted KB to say through all of this, like even in this initial argument, like the whole point and what KB wishes is that Fern would just know that she can't do something, right? Whereas I
Mm,
think like Fern was kind of in some ways compartmentalizing or wanting everything to just be better. You know, like it's okay
uh-huh.
if I say it's okay, right? And we're going to figure it out. And I think even the kind of look we see her give Neel in that moment, right? Because Neel is really concerned about KB. And Fern kind of looks at him and says, "No, she's going to be okay. Don't worry." You know, she's still in that captain mode of trying to keep everything together, and if you don't pay attention to the like cracks, then you can just kind of forge ahead. And I think
Hmm.
that whole theme throughout this episode is that no, someone like KB cannot forge ahead. They have to slow down and think of other options, which is really kind of what their argument ends up being in the next scene.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that that is sort of the overall theme of they have to slow down and figure like that's a collective understanding, right? Not just an individual understanding about how to have KB on their team too, right? Anyway, I think that in this regardless, like in the beginning, I was just a little like, oh, what is going on? And then I quickly was very happy that this episode would focus on that question that we had wondered previously while watching the episode, and how serious was it going to get. And the truth is, like, pretty freaking serious.
Yeah,
Like,
total system
yeah,
shutdown.
total system shutdown.
I did want to mention before we get too far into the kids, we have the X-Wings that show up.
Yeah.
And this is still kind of a question mark of, did Kim actually send the X-Wings? They flew off kind of quickly. So if Kim had sent the X-Wings, it kind of felt like they would be looking for the kids, right?
Yeah,
Because
no.
Kim would have told them. So I don't know. I just feel like I'm still expecting Carson Teva to show up, and he hasn't yet.
I know. So I didn't think initially, I had thought that Kim sent the X-Wings. I think we had said that when we were watching it together, but after thinking about it, it's not like Lanupa's like a secret spa or anything like that, right? I think this is part of the New Republic. I think the fact that we witness the entry ships being shot down by the pirates, it makes sense that the X-Wings would be here because they were under
Yeah.
siege.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I don't think this is like a secret base or anything like that, right? So I think they're just basically cops, right? Here.
That would make sense. Yeah, because we do
Figuring
see
it
them
out.
kind of doing that in The Mandalorian.
Exactly. Yeah, it's funny because in my head I was like, "Oh, this is like a secret place." And it's really not, because
Right.
it's only the only thing secret about it is the pirate thing underneath. But that's not even that secret because it's like part of the legend and people know it's there, and they're even going around the spa talking about it. So anyway,
Where is Carson though?
where's Carson? I don't think he's I don't think he's coming. I don't think he's in this.
When the X-Wings showed up too, when we were watching it, I was like, is Zeb here also? Is this where we get the next live action Zeb?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, before we jump into talking more about the kids' own journey, let's talk about Jod and Brutus and the pirates and the right of last appeal and everything. So first we see Jod, like Caitlin mentioned, emerging with the treasure on him. And I mean, I was really shocked that SM-33 was immediately taken out. I was like, oh my God, okay.
Both of them covered in gold.
Yeah. The screenshots that are coming out of this are just so funny. I feel like the scene of him emerging from the floor is amazing, but it's even better when you slow it down and pause. The faces that Jude Law is making is so perfect. I love it. It is so pirate covered in treasure. It's amazing. It's amazing. But eventually we get back into Brutus's court, and it's very similar. It reminded me very much of the Pirates of the Caribbean scene at World's End, where there's this pirate court and everyone's hearing everyone out. So this is us with hearing out the pirate code, which is the right of last appeal. And I thought this was so good. Again, another, like, I think extremely well written, well paced scene where I loved looking at all of the pirates around and in the background and the character design and everything. It was so perfect. Oh my God. One thing before we jump into the ship, I completely forgot to mention this. Can you believe, Caitlin, that we got the pearly alien from The Last Jedi on the platform? How did we forget this?
We both were sitting on the couch and just shot straight up. It was like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme. We both pointed.
Really was.
It was so funny.
She's there. The opera singer who sings. It was unreal. It was unreal. I cannot believe that we got that. That was my, like, Be Still, My Last Jedi, Loving a Heart. That was amazing.
So good. I'm so glad you brought that up. It's not in our notes.
It's not in our notes, and it was a wow moment that I feel like people didn't really even notice. But like, I'm here for it.
We did.
God bless. And it makes sense. She'd be there at this luxurious spa.
So true.
Yeah.
She's got that opera money. She's ready for the mud baths.
Yeah. So that was amazing. Anyway, back to the pirates. Okay. So we got Glurb and his glowweed plantation wands.
Oh my God.
We got Kona. What's the story with Kona? The female pirate who Jod says should have her own fleet. And like, Jod says that he failed her. What is up with that? There's a history there. We got so many pirates. I don't know. Brutus.
I was so happy to see Brutus back in action.
Again.
You know I was excited to see Brutus again.
in the captain's chair with the plasma hourglass thing. Immediately, you were like, "That is so cool. That is so cool."
It is so cool. I want one. It's like a
I
lava.
know.
It's a glorified lava lamp.
It is, but it's somehow so
It's
much cooler.
better. It's better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really liked Jod's speech here about, it's very kind of swashbuckling, the whole thing of where he's given this right of last appeal, but he doesn't immediately start talking, right? He kind of wastes some time in the beginning, and everyone is just kind of like, are you going to say anything?
Yeah,
But
he starts with, "I'm hungry."
yeah, but I thought that speech was really appealing, honestly. This idea
Mhm.
of hunger and how you've just always been hungry. The hunger is never satiated. And I think that can be quite literal in the life of the pirate, but also, and perhaps for Jod himself too, we still don't know kind of Jod's full background. Don't worry, guys, there's still time for Order 66 to rear its head in this show. Um, but the idea of the treasure too being the need for treasure, the greed really can never be satiated as well. But now he knows a place where it can constantly be replenished, right?
Mhm.
I also just have to say, I loved when he was like, yeah, Brutus is a good first mate. And I was like, oh, such a burn, not a captain,
I
just a
know, and
first
everyone
mate.
was agreeing
Yeah.
too. He's like, "Yeah, he is a good first
I
mate."
was insulted for Brutus personally.
So was I, and I was sort of like, I can't believe Brutus isn't, like, roaring or yelping or anything like that, like, getting
Yelping,
mad at that. Yelping, I don't know.
barking,
What did barking?
howling.
That's just you.
Yeah, called out. Okay. Uh, all right. We have to talk though. I'm surprised you didn't start with this, but there's a pirate shanty. We
Shanty.
finally got a
It
pirate shanty.
Do you think this episode was written in the 2020 pirate shanty TikTok era? Or do you think this show was conceived during that time period and then they were like, "You know what would be so great?
Do I think Chris
A
Ford
shanty."
and John Watts are on TikTok and
Yeah, do you think they're on pirate TikTok?
they were on Shanty Talk back in the day? I don't know. Anything's possible. I actually think it finally made its way to their Instagram reels. You know what I mean? And
Amen.
and we've
There
already got
once
the
was a
pirate story, and
dun, 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 dun.
they were like, you know what our show needs? A pirate shanty, because we do have the line from SM33 last week when he's walking around like so disgruntled around the spa, and he says you can't play a shanty on a harp, you know. And now we finally got the shanty, and gosh darn it, SM33 couldn't hear it, couldn't listen to it.
I know.
He was
Poor
out of
SM13.
commission.
But he definitely knows it because it seems like everyone knows it.
Everyone knows it for
So
Attin, he did plunder.
let's read it. Yeah, let's read
I
it.
think
Okay.
you got to sing it.
Okay.
I can't sing
All
right
right.
now. So.
Tack Rennod soared away aboard the Onyx Cinder, and never was he seen again. For at Attin he did plunder.
Attin.
At Attin he did. I think I screwed it up in terms of.
I think you missed an away. There's two aways.
I think I did.
Yeah.
Oh, Tack Rennod soared away aboard the Onyx Cinder, and never was he seen again. For at Attin he did plunder. Okay,
Yeah,
let's break this down. So, okay. Obviously, Tack Rennod soared away aboard the Onyx Cinder. We know that, right? But I think it's interesting, per the theory of Tack Rennod is still on at Attin. He never was seen again.
Mm-hmm.
For at Attin, he did plunder. Plunder means steal, take over.
Yeah, steal. Ransack.
And ransack, yeah. Pillage, if you will.
Pillage and plunder, yeah.
Yeah. And don't give a hoot. Anyway, the implication of the shanty is that, yeah, he was never seen again, but is he still there? Right? That's what I took away from this, because I'm still clinging to my theory that Captain Tack Rennod is still on at Attin, potentially the supervisor. We still don't know. The fact that we didn't see the image in the hollow, Neel even made a comment about that. It feels right. However, when Brutus says that Rennod died, it kind of made the sense that it wasn't that long ago. You had written that in the notes. And I totally agree. Like it doesn't feel like it was that long ago when he said that. It feels like or it wasn't that long ago that we felt like
the inference is that
Yeah.
implication, I guess, in the way that Brutus said it. Because, right, Jod says he heard directly from Tack Rennod about Attin and the he doesn't say Old Republic Mint. I don't think he says that here. But when he's talking about getting this information about the treasure, and Brutus says, yeah, but Tack Rennod died. So I don't know. It just sounds more recent. But at the same time, the way that the pirates have kind of all talked about Attin and the way the kids have heard about Attin is that it's stuff of legends, right? Which that makes it sound much more ancient, much more long term.
However, it's also legend that's definitely not long term. The Jedi.
I can't stand this. Like I don't get it. I don't know. I don't understand it. I guess stuff just becomes myth so quickly in the Star Wars galaxy.
I think there's so many planets. There is such a communication breakdown that we've seen through the Empire that it actually does make sense. When you have these isolated planets and isolated peoples and an oppressive government that makes things seem much more far away and uses propaganda to prop up their message and how good their government is and how they're helping people. And it just makes things feel so far away because the presence of an empire, right? And because of that, I feel like we can take that learning that we've been talking about for years, because I understand what you're talking about, but I do think that things become myth so quickly within the Star Wars universe that it's hard for us to suss out the timeline for even the pirates. Like, are we talking 100 years? Are we talking 50 years? Also, how old Tack Rennod is. It's Star Wars. Like, he could be a creature. He could be I think we had talked about him being a droid pirate, an undead pirate or something that could also be a thing too. I mean, that's not necessarily out of the realm.
He could be like a General
stories.
Grievous too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing is probably our most popular contemporary pirate story is Pirates of the Caribbean. The first one, The Curse of the Black Pearl, they're all undead pirates.
Yeah.
They're all I don't even know how old they are, but they can't die, and that's the whole thing. So the fact is that this is a reference, which we've already seen Pirates of the Caribbean references from episode 1 and 2 in this, that I don't know, maybe Tack Rennod is undead as well, or a General Grievous concept, like you said, just zombie pirate could be something, I don't know, held together by droid parts.
Well, while you were talking, I was thinking he could have even died a long time ago, but set it up so that there are droids still running it as if he's alive.
Absolutely.
I think that's an interesting concept too.
I agree. Also, just to note, this episode that we're talking about right now is about a little girl who got into an accident and is able to be kept alive by her mechanical appendages.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So there's that as well. I mean, I'm not implying. I don't know what I'm implying.
Well, clearly
but
they have the technology on Attin.
That's what I'm saying. Attin is able to do that. It's technologically advanced. It's there. It's available.
Yeah.
Right. So who knows about Tack? Right.
Literally no one.
No one knows. And I think my guess is it's probably like 50 to 75 years ago that this crash happened at Attin, given the skeletons and the spider webs and how much it was buried on Attin. But who knows, man? Who knows?
Yeah.
I do think it will be explained. And by us getting this much information in this episode, I feel like by the end of the season, we'll have some thoughts around who Tack Rennod is, what the heck is the deal with Attin, because I said this to you when we were watching it. It is so funny to me that The Acolyte felt like our mystery show in the beginning and ended up being not a huge mystery by the end of it. But this series is way more of a mystery to me. I feel like we have so many unanswered questions and things that we're tracking. That's every episode has a sort of satisfying next piece of the puzzle,
Yeah.
And it's very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, I think for me, it's realizing that the Attin being hidden and Rennod coming onto the scene does not have to be the same timeline either, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's what I keep conflating in my head, and I have to consciously separate the two events. Like, Attin could have been, we know that Attin was hidden in the days of the Old Republic because that's what Kim tells us. So Rennod, why is that so hard?
It's really hard to say.
Rennod.
It's not easy.
Captain Tack. He could have come on the scene, like you said, 50, 75 years ago, and Attin was still hidden for, centuries potentially. But now he has taken over in this time period. But then the question still is, what is he doing with the money? Is he content to just sit on it and be in charge on Attin and keep the money all there?
I think that is, yeah, I think so.
Because that's kind of the pirate way, to just hoard it.
Yeah, and sit on your pile of money.
The pirate's hoard, yeah.
Yeah. So I think yeah, personally. But the thing is that it's not like people are it doesn't feel like there's an oppressive force at the helm of Attin. That's the thing, right? If Captain Tack was actually the supervisor, but I guess that's the same. Sorry, I'm working this out in my head because I do think there's a lot of missing pieces with this theory that I'm just working out right now. But the Wizard of Oz of it all, I guess there are people who are content in the land of Oz, and then there are people who are not content in the land of Oz, right? And if we're thinking about the supervisor as a wizard character, which I think we have, I think that continues, right? Because I feel like there probably is some discontent in Attin that we just are not super aware of because our point of view is kids, right?
Right. And it is oppressive because it's a false reality.
Exactly.
So,
I think that's the other thing.
Yeah.
It's this utopia that feels so shielded and guarded from the outside world. And what's the cost of that?
Yeah, exactly. What's the cost of it? And what will people feel once they know? Which we know that the parents know that Attin is hidden, right? We learned that last week. So I think there's still, I think I said this last week too, that I kind of wish we had a little bit more with the parents on Attin, just to hear more about what they do or don't know and compare that with what the kids are learning. But we did learn last week that the adults know that Attin is hidden. So there's still, all that to say is just a reminder, and there's still more to learn about the reality of Attin.
Agreed. Okay, another question is, eventually Jod convinces in his right of last appeal that he convinces them to go along and steer them to Attin, and if it doesn't exist, then they're going to throw him at the airlock, aka walk the plank. And the question that you had, I had, we all had is, what happened to the Jod's lightsaber? This is really Chekhov's lightsaber. It's going to go off at some point. We're going to see it again, but the last episode ended with the lightsaber igniting off screen. So where is it now?
That is the question. It's definitely going to.
I'm sure he has it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to come back. It's just, who took it? Did Brutus take it? I'm surprised we didn't see a shot of it, like on Brutus's holster or something like that.
Brewster's holster.
I think Brutus would be so offended to be called Brewster.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so I was really just charmed by that pirate scene, and that was sort of it for our Jod pirate part. This episode is pretty short, I will say. It is a 33-minute episode, and it felt really short. When it was over, I think we were like, no. But to be fair, I'm like that every time. Let's go back to the kids then, because that's all that we have with the pirates. So not sure we have introduced the fact that there are the cutest trash crabs ever.
Trash crabs.
I don't I need a second for this because I just think they're the cutest things ever. They turned out to be evil, obviously, but I think they are so, I love the design. I love the fact that they mimic everything. I love the follow, friendly. And then eventually the food. I just think it's so great. It did remind me of, not to make another freaking Wizard of Oz reference, but it did remind me of the Munchkins when they're like, follow the yellow brick road. Like, that's kind of the vibe with the trash crabs when they were like, follow. To me, it was the same. But
that's so true.
Anyway, Anyway, I just thought they were so cute. And it's so funny that Wim calls the trash crabs locals. Like,
I could
the
not get over this.
locals.
He's like, they're locals. They can help us. And I love his logic because they can talk. So they're intelligent. They live here. They can help us. And you know what? Checks out. Except
I
it
know,
doesn't. But it's
it was very Ezra, but then you realize that they're kind of like automatrons to the mother crab, which I could not believe was stop motion.
it was so
It's
great.
just unreal.
It was so good. It was so
It looks so
incredible.
good. And then Star Wars released a behind the scenes where the top of the mother crab's shell is covered in a bunch of kits from like Star Wars toys and different model kits and things like that. And there's a bunch of Easter eggs on the crab shell itself, like totally covered in like a piece of Millennium Falcon, a piece of R2D2 and C3PO. It's very, very cool. And just to see it in the stop motion format, it's just so awesome.
Yeah, I love that. And I know we're kind of jumping ahead, but
Sorry.
I feel like you should, long ago on Sky Talkers, we used to have a bingo card for things we said all the time on the show. And I think if we were to redo that bingo card now, we would have getting ahead of ourselves. Sorry for jumping ahead.
Yeah, we should probably just not apologize and just go for it.
Right,
So-
right. But I loved when they finally see the mother crab and Wim is like, how come I'm always wrong about who's the good guys? It was so funny. And I put in our notes, is this growth from Wim? From Wim?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is the self-reflection. It was so good. Also, the crab is called tetanus, which is, I think, a reference to the fact that it's all rusty.
Metal,
like the tetanus shot. Yeah. Fantastic. So let's just like back up just a second and talk a little bit about Fern and KB's initial argument when they're arguing about what to do next. And KB is initially a little ticked off by the concept of climbing up to get the ship. And KB suggests maybe we should consider some other options. And Fern says, well, we have to get back to the ship, right? I can't think of any other options. And KB goes, you can't. So you just assume there aren't any. And I thought that was interesting because it is true. I do think Fern should be more sensitive to KB's Oggs and her situation and everything. But I do think that this really spoke to something that we've been picking up on for a long time between KB and Fern, where it seems like KB is the one that's like, whoa, that was really close. Like we did this like scary maneuver.
Yeah. And even Fern's attitude about things, like that was too much. Or even in the very first episode, remember when they're getting the ship they're digging out the ship, and Fern was, or KB is like, you don't have to be so mean.
Yeah. To me, I was thinking about that first shot, when we first meet Fern and KB and they're riding on the bike and KB is in the tandem seat. And when the bike stops and I think KB gives her a look or says like, that was really close or something. And we were like, oh, she's definitely the voice of reason here with Fern's rebelliousness. But I think it's definitely more than that. Now we know it's more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think KB calling out, you just assume there aren't any other options, I think was really interesting. And I think really set off the tension in the episode of, sometimes you just have to realize what your friends can and can't do and what they're comfortable with. And this communication is really key. And the fact that Fern disregarded that, I think we can sort of look at and feel a lot of empathy and sympathy for the whole situation. And by the end of it, when they do make up and they, embrace and they're like, you're my best friend, it was so cute. And I think that there was just a need of communication here because KB did initially say that she was okay, right? But
yeah, and the thing is too is that Fern knows that KB is different.
That's the thing.
Right, because she said last week, are you worried about the corrosion? And then so she knows that can affect KB. And then also, when they got to the bottom of the slide and she knows what's wrong with KB. Oh, it's her Oggs. We got to reset her whatever it is. So she is aware, but I think there was that missing piece. I think, like I said, KB just wants Fern to get it, but Fern's not going to get it fully unless KB tells her. And there's that kind of...
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And so it would, Fern should slow down and Fern should be taking into account the whole group, because what we see here is that it's not just KB that would have struggled with climbing up. Neel struggles too. He can't, as he tells her, he can't reach between the rungs. It's very difficult for him. And he says pretty
Mhm.
point blank, he says, "I'm sorry, not everyone can do things the same way you can." And I think that also was a good moment for Fern and probably some self-reflection as well for her, right? They should have had more conversation about it as a group. But
Mhm.
KB also had to tell Fern where her limits are. But that's also so hard. And you don't want to have to do that. You don't want to tell your friend no to do this thing. And it's a, like you said, there's empathy for everyone in this situation. And thankfully
Yeah.
by the end of it, they were able to come out of it as a group and hugging and best friends.
Yeah, it was great. And I think it's notable that while the moment that Neil says, "I can't walk between the rungs and I not everyone can do everything that you can," at that point, Fern reaches for the rope and makes an adjustment so that it's easier for Neil and helps him out. And then they get to the top, right? And I think her even making that adjustment feels like a character step, a step of understanding, right? Once that is talked about, I suppose, right?
Yeah, I thought this was so interesting because that Fern ended up being right. That
Mhm.
this was the best way to get to the ship. Wim was wrong about who the
Mhm.
good guys were. They were not, they are locals, but they're not good locals. And Fern is, I hate to say it, she's like usually kind of right about these things, about what the best course of action is. She's really creative on her feet. Like we saw with SM33 about, overriding his memory and all of that. Even though that ended in a scary way, that was ultimately what they needed to do to get to the next step, right? And so this was the best way to get to the ship. And she was able to figure out how to help Neil and, use the rope to help him get to the next rung. But that situation wouldn't have ended the same way for KB. KB
No.
could have climbed, but when her Augs ran out or
She
got
probably would've
corroded,
died because they
yeah.
were up there.
Yeah, there would have
Yeah.
been no materials for her to get reset the way that Wim does. And I love when Wim and Fern are arguing about it in the beginning. And he's like, "You're just gonna fall and smash all your bones." And that kind of is what would have happened to KB, I think. So, but then in that moment too, Fern is like, "I'm not having this childish argument with you." Wim. And he's like, "Yes, you are. No, I'm not." Their whole thing. But so it did end up being better for them to split up because that Fern was able to get to the ship, but KB definitely couldn't have made that climb, even though Neil was able to. It was such a great, the whole episode and talking about disability and accessibility in a lot of ways too. It was
Mhm.
just so well done, and to see it explored among kids, like talking about it with each other, I just thought it was, like I said, it was so well done, and it was so nice to see this conversation in Star Wars and how they kind of overcame it together. And I really loved it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I thought it was great. And then just eventually when Wim is able to help KB when KB almost goes into total system shutdown, I thought this is gonna sound weird, but I really thought the sort of tactileness of how we were able to see how, like, melting down this thing and all the different steps that it all made sense to me. The camera moment, the camera movements, the way that they melted it into the sand in order to make a cylinder again and putting it back and then figuring out, like, I really felt when Wim couldn't really open the back drawer and fit it all back in, right?
Mhm.
I think that was a stress point, but I think that the camera really showed me
What was happening.
what was happening, and I
Mhm.
think it really added to the drama, I guess, of that moment, but
Yeah.
and it was just really well done, and I just think the conversation was fantastic, and the fact that she says, that the title of the episode is if I, like, can't or am not friends with Fern and I tell her my limits, then I'll have 0 friends again, and then by the end of it, when Wim is like, "That's so dumb. You could just be friends with me and Neil," and I think that is so sweet because that is the sometimes, like, the boys' answer to things, like, "It's okay, like, whatever."
Yeah.
But I think girl friendships are a little more complicated than boy friendships, in my opinion, but maybe that's just my bias talking, and I think that that was also a little bit part of it, but I just think that whole scene was great, and then by the end of it, maybe the cutest line
Oh,
ever
say it.
is when they say, "Oh, that was close." To what? Total system shutdown. You probably thought it would be more exciting to save someone's life. Anyway, thanks, Jedi. So cute.
It was
It was so cute.
we were both sitting there going, "Oh, oh,
Yeah.
oh, oh my gosh." I do want to go back to Fern and Wim's conversation though, because like I said, this conversation about like disability, I thought was so well done. And it's this section right here that I think really is the heart of it when you have these kids talking about it, because KB says, ever since my accident, Fern always assumed I could do everything she could. Like I'm not different. And Wim says, okay, that sounds good. And on face value, that is good, right? Like if something happens to your friend, you don't want to be looked at differently. You still want to be friends. You want to be part of the group. You want to be invited to the stuff. You know what I mean? Like that is good. But then, like KB says, she says, but I am different. And pretending I can run around on a freezing cold moon through a bunch of steam, climb a cliff after days without maintenance, that's just not reality, Fern, because that is the other side of it, is that yes, it is so lovely that nothing changed about Fern and KB's relationship or how much Fern wanted to do stuff with KB, whatever it is. But the reality is that it is different, and you have to acknowledge those differences too in order to find a new way to do the thing you want to do. Or in the Skeleton Crew's case, you know, life or death situation, trying to get back to their hidden planet, right? But I just thought it was such a beautiful, succinct way to talk about the challenges of these relationships. And when you are in situations like this, where you're trying to accommodate people who do have differences, and that you can't just ignore them. And that while I think there was a line of thinking at some point that was like, you should just ignore it because people don't want to talk about it, or it's rude or something like that, when it's actually not. And you do have to, you know, you have to communicate and you have to acknowledge our differences. And especially when someone like KB, there are limitations to what she can do. And when she's eventually able to communicate that with Fern, it makes all the difference for them.
Absolutely. And it should be noted that at this point, I'm not saying that we can fully compare these kids in terms of their importance, but I kind of think we can in this episode, when KB is the one that has the location to Attin in her head.
Right.
She is the most important. So
that's so true.
And I think that by having that sense of importance around her, it really highlights like the importance of communication, right? Because it really is a life or death situation. It's not just the death of like the potential death of KB. Like I don't even like to say that, right? But it also would be the death of information for the rest. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's doubly important.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
It is. I like I said at the top of the show too, I just really liked that it was Wim and KB together, because we've talked a lot about how Wim and Fern are actually very similar. And I think KB even kind of hints at this when she says, you know, Fern's not exactly living in the real world herself. And Wim responds something like, don't I know it? Or like, tell me about it. He says something like that, because they are very similar. And so to have Wim paired, you know, like if Wim and Fern are the high energy, always kind of crashing forward, then Neel and KB are the more rational friends in the relationship, right, with their respective best friends. So it was really nice to see Wim paired with the other rational person of KB and see how their interactions would go. And I think that even her saying at the end, you know, I'm sure you thought saving someone's life would be more exciting. I think this is also important to Wim's character growth. Of it doesn't have to be these huge, obviously it's huge what he did for KB, I'm not saying it's not, but it's not this lightsaber. Yeah, exactly. It's not this lightsaber in the hand, you know, falling off a cliff kind of moment. That just being there for KB, and I would say even just listening to her talk about what it is to live life the way she does and how that can be challenging with her friend Fern, I think that was just as important as what he did for her physically in replacing the Augs and everything, you know?
I completely agree. And I really like that this was the hero moment, especially after last episode where the lightsaber was upside down and it was kind of played for humor, and I do think it was kind of sad.
Yeah, I agree. It was. And Wim was clearly kind of, I don't know, embarrassed, sad
Exactly.
that the event had ended up that way.
Yeah, and I'm sure he was living with that, walking along, being like, "Ugh, that was so embarrassing."
Yeah.
So, I rewatched that episode last night actually with both these episodes with my parents, and the lightsaber moment with Wim stands out to me as I think funny, but like I mentioned, it does make me feel sad just because I know how important that would be for Wim.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm so glad that he got a hero moment here. And KB saying anyway, thanks Jedi, I think means more to Wim than anything.
It does.
So,
You can see it on his face. It was just,
face.
it was so precious. And of course, KB knows that that would mean something to Wim.
Exactly.
And that's just so freaking cute.
It's perfect. So eventually the kids all end up on the top of this droid ship that is taking their ship to the scrap pile, right? I did find that sequence a little confusing, I will say, how they got from one place to another and everything. I think that in terms of me talking about the tactileness of when KB's life was saved, I felt like this scene was a little confusing in terms of A to B to C to D.
Yeah, I thought that that Fern and Neel had first jumped onto the Onyx Cinder. I didn't realize they were on the other ship things, the tugboats, if you will.
Yeah, we needed a pickup shot, I think.
Yeah.
But that's my one complaint about this episode. And eventually we get to the kids realizing we got to save our ship. And I loved that. I think when we talk about Fern and as we have, that she really is such a leader, right?
Is.
And especially by the end of this episode where she is making the decision, she eventually makes the decision to hit the button. When the kids were running down the hill, like yelling, I love that detail because that's how kids are. Where they're just like, it's perfect. Yeah. And I think once they get into the ship and the imminent danger of this huge claw, this Toy Story 3 moment of the ship potentially being eaten by this garbage droid, the tension was really high. And what I thought was so great, and I know you thought this too, was how we have finally gotten to this point in episode 6 of Skeleton Crew where we have seen the kids learn how to pilot the ship, like Neel, take note of how Jod powers up the ship, and then Fern with her own leadership skills, and then we have Wim again in the gunner position, and choosing to press the button and reveal that there's a better ship underneath this other ship, I think was the best choice. It's the emergency hull demolition sequence button. And it's funny because I just feel like we didn't really go back to this that much when we watched it in the first 2 episodes.
Mm-mm.
And I know that we were like, that's definitely going to come back again. Obviously, like we all knew that, right? But at this point, I remember you being like, this ship was clad in armor and ready. Like Dak Rennod said in the hologram. You're like, oh my God, it was clad in armor.
Clad in armor. They took the armor off.
Which, okay, then it brings me, so now they've taken the armor off. Just like a phoenix, it has risen from the ashes. It's very cool, right? We have this new ship. And I saw someone comment that it was like the opposite of what had happened to the ship in The Mandalorian. What's this ship's name?
The Razor Crest?
The Razor Crest. Like the Razor Crest was just completely obliterated.
and
this was,
yeah, complete opposite.
Rose from the ashes, which I think is really cool. If we want to think about that potentially Dak Rennod was successful to getting to Attin with the ship clad in armor, right? That he needed to do that, needed to have a ship clad in armor in order to go there. Now the ship that they're taking to Attin doesn't have armor on it. Is this going to be a problem?
I think it could be because the armor is potentially how he got through the barrier.
Exactly.
Yeah. But we also know that the parents are trying to get a message out to the kids through the barrier. So potentially they could, and then they would be able to, I don't know, find a hole in the barrier to come through.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what I loved about this whole sequence is that the kid, the first time we see them all trying to escape in episode 3 with Jod, we see Wim and Fern arguing about who gets to fly the ship, who's in the right gunner position, who shot who down. It's all arguing, especially between the two of them. But here in this scene, everyone knows their station. Everyone goes. Wim is like, oh, I'm going to go and shoot down the trash monster. And Fern says she's going to steer. And KB is doing the power thing and Neel's got the thrusters. And I don't know, it was you and I were sitting there going, oh my God, they're using their skills that they've learned. Look at
I just love the learning.
Look at them growing.
So great.
It really was. And I really think that next week and in the season finale that we really will see the kids hatch a plan together, communicate well, figure out what they want to do, understand where everyone's strengths are, and be excited about that, right? Like Wim is no longer mad that he's not the captain, right? And now Fern and KB can better communicate. I think Neel is more confident in his skills. They're going to be a well-oiled machine by the end of it, and they're going to pull one over on Jod, and I'm excited to see that.
I can't wait for it. I mean, the group hug says it all. We were not at the point of group hug
No,
before.
we weren't.
And now we're group hugging.
Oh, it was because it was KB and Fern, and then Wim was like, let's go, Neel, and joined in the so cute.
Yeah, but just a reminder, they're not adults because they still say claimsies on the new ship.
Them flying.
Right?
There was Wim who said it as they're zooming away, and he yells out, "Claimsies on the new ship."
It's on the new ship. It's perfect.
I was like, "Wow, really taking us back to episode 1."
I know, it was fantastic. Okay, so amazing episode. We loved it. Right? What happens next? So we all have the coordinates for Attin. I think we're rushing to Attin. We're going to see the pirates there. We're going to, like you said, have a showdown potentially with Jod. How are they going to get through? Are we going to find out about the supervisor? What about the parents? I think there's so many questions to be answered, and it's all very exciting. But one thing I wanted to make sure that we talked about is the Thank the Maker podcast posted a screenshot from last week's episode with the hologram of Tak Rennod. Okay. It looks like Hondo's species. Didn't notice that before. So what do we think about that?
That would just be too hilarious, honestly.
If it was Hondo?
And if
it's not Hondo.
If it was, I don't know, someone related to Hondo. I guess not everyone of Hondo's species is related to Hondo, but he would never stop talking about it if it was someone in his family who found Attin. You know what I mean?
But maybe he doesn't know because he's been there forever.
I know, but maybe he's about to find out along with the rest of the pirate world.
Wow. Could be him. Could be someone else. Could be related. Like I was under the impression that we didn't see anything in that hologram, right? It was really hard to see. But that screenshot and that pausing it at the right moment, you can see something.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to think about it, but I was shook to my core.
If he's still alive.
Yeah. So, any other thoughts on the rest of the episode or any theory about what happens next?
I don't know. I guess I'm just curious to see. I feel like someone will make it to Attin next week. Maybe the pirates, maybe the kids. I wonder if the kids will call Kim now that they're on their own without Jod. So I think that there's still a possibility for Carson to show up and Kim.
And Order 66 background.
Right. And
Jod.
Order 66 background. I think someone is making it to Attin next week. I feel like it might be the pirates, but I feel like someone is making it to Attin next week.
Yeah.
We still got to figure out what's going on with Jod's lightsaber. And, will Wim get another hero moment that's more kind of flashy? I don't know, maybe. But I also think it'll be more about what the kids accomplished together as a group.
Something that just occurred to me literally right now, because I have Wizard of Oz on the brain, is it's interesting to think about the 4 characters of our kids, right? As like a similar core 4 to like Dorothy Tin Man, Cowardly Lion, and the Scarecrow, right? And their journey in Wizard of Oz is to see the wizard, right? And to help Dorothy get home, and then help each of them get a heart, a brain, all that jazz. But I wonder if there is a sense of the fact that the kids, now a group of just them, take the ship back and get back to Attin before the pirates arrive and try to warn the supervisor about the pirates
Mm-hmm.
coming. And there's a sort of a journey to, like, we have to get to the supervisor, similar to Dorothy and the crew trying to get to the wizard and talking to the wizard around trying to get home.
Yeah.
Right. And I wonder if they're sort of met with some opposition, and that's sort of a frustrating tension point with the parents.
Yeah, no one's
If they
listening
ever
to
get
them.
Yeah, no one's listening to them because they're just kids and it's just silly, right? Especially if the supervisor is a pirate himself. So if we get, I don't know, that sort of tension there. I don't know. I
That's
was
a good
just thinking
theory.
about
I
that.
like that with the kids getting there first and still kind of being met with this, you don't know anything, even though they've had this,
Yeah.
you know,
Journey.
adventure out in the galaxy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to the hero's journey in bringing back the elixir, but
Mhm.
are the people able to drink the elixir or no? So that's sort of the question in the hero's journey cycle that our characters are going on,
Yeah.
and are very clearly going on.
That's funny when you're talking about them as like the group from The Wizard of Oz. And I don't think we really have explored that super closely. But I was like, oh, it's so obvious. Wim
It
is the one who
is.
needs the
It is.
brain. Neil needs the courage. KB is the Tin Man. Fern as Dorothy is maybe less concrete, but the others make total sense for a respective Wizard of Oz counterpart.
Yeah, I would also say that you could swap Wim and Fern for those two characters that you named as well.
You would put Fern. I can't really see Fern as a scarecrow.
I don't know. I think that Fern is so rebellious and free.
Yeah, that's true. And it would make sense to be able to switch Wim and Fern because they are similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not one to one, but it is
It's
there.
not, yeah.
I do think it's there.
Yeah, I definitely think it is there.
Yeah. So, but we'll see if they actually take that through. And I just feel like I'm trying to figure out how we're going to find out the next piece about the supervisor. And it just sort of makes sense that the kids would, as they are trying to figure out what the heck what is about Attin, I can't see them arriving back to the planet and not being like, what's so special about our planet beyond our home? You know, I think that now that they have this information about the mint and everything, I think that there has to be a next step there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And of course, we have to wonder, when will we see 33 again? Is he
worried.
okay?
I'm worried. And also, what if like he's gone and then they reprogram him or something and now he serves the kids again?
No.
I don't know.
No. I wonder if there'll be some detail in the pirate's code that says once your captain is captured, you don't have to listen to him anymore. Or
That's what I mean. Like then he'll be like on the kid's side.
yeah. So we'll see. I'm sure 33 can find a loophole, or Fern can make one up that 33
Or KB
will,
can figure out something with
reprogram his.
33.
It's only 500 million wires. Okay, girl. Whatever you say.
She's such a superstar. I love her so much.
I do too. She's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, is there anything else that we need to chat about for episode 6?
I don't think so. Excellent episode. I'm so excited for next week. We only have 2 weeks left of Skeleton Crew.
Stop.
Makes me so sad. I realized that this week was probably the last week that I'll watch it with my Christmas lights on my Christmas tree, and that makes me sad because the vibes are just so perfect.
You could keep the lights. I don't know.
It's got to go down. It's got to
go down. I said that and I was like, it's got to go.
It's got to go. But
Yeah.
I'm mad about it. So just know that.
Totally.
Know that.
I'm knowing it. And also, by the end of this episode, you still have a voice. Amazing.
Yeah. We are hanging on.
Congrats.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I do think that is going to wrap up this week's episode, all about Skeleton Crew, episode 6, Zero Friends Again. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for bearing with me, as my voice is not 100% right now. Hopefully next week it will be back to normal. But I appreciate you guys for hanging in there with me. And with you and with Charlotte. But if you want to tell us your Rennod, however you say his name.
Very hard.
Theory. You can find us on social media at Sky Talkers Pod on Twitter or X, or our personal handles. Charlotte's is at Caitlin. Charlotte's is at Clarity, and mine is at Caitlin Plusher. We're also on Blue Sky under Sky Talkers. And you can check out our Instagram and TikTok, our website. Go to Instagram and TikTok if you want to see how our Sky Talker walkie-talkies turned out. Like I said, they're super cute, so please go look. And you can also use our email to contact us. And if you have a couple seconds and would like to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, that really helps other people find our show. And if you're interested in other ways to support us, you can head on over to our Patreon and check out our reward tiers there.
Yes, I want to say a huge thank you to these patrons: Megan, Emma, Jose, Justin, Alexa, Callie, That's It, Linda, Allison, BB Nate, Madison, Tim, Aubrey, Colin, Stefan, Charlotte, Patrick, Koval, Another Skywalker, Jeff, Kate, Maggie, James, Anna, Paul, and Kelly. Thank you so much for supporting us.
Yes, thank you guys so much. And until next time, may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.
This has been a 58 Ember production. For more shows, please visit the 58 Ember channel, 58ember.com, or find us at 58 Ember Media on socials.